Hola, ¿qué tal, mi gente? You're here on the SoCal Sound, and you're watching another coveted SoCal Sound session. And while you're here, please consider subscribing, giving this video a like, and leaving a little comment. I'm Byron Gonzalez, and today I am honored to be welcoming in studio crooner, songwriter, and the band leader of an amazing band called Thee Sinseers. Right here, we got Joey Quiñones.
So, man, thanks for having me.
¿Cómo están, amigo?
Muy bien, muy bien.
Un gusto de tenerte aquí.
So happy to be here.
Yeah, actually, it's been kind of a long time coming. Back in 2019, you guys were going to play the Levitt, and I was like, I got to have this band in, and it's hard to coordinate with a bunch of people.
With nine people.
Yeah.
9 fools from Islos, yeah.
So I'm sure, but now we have you, which is the important part, and I wish the band was here, but, you know.
Yeah, we all have our different roles, so right now everybody's doing their thing. I got to do this in my part, so, just got to divide and conquer,
Yeah, exactly, true. You got a lot of things to juggle, too.
Yeah.
So Joey, thanks for coming here again. You're about to play a couple songs in there, but after we get to know a little bit more about Joey and who you are, just brass tacks, are you a coffee or tea person in the morning?
Ooh. That's a good question. On the road, I like to drink tea. I can't do coffee because coffee just gets me so messed up, you know what I mean?
Oh, really?
And I'm already kind of naturally a little bit too much, so, coffee just amplifies that. So I'm going to say tea.
Cool. And are you a morning person or are you more of a night owl?
Night owl, yeah.
Night owl?
This is really hard for me right now.
I know it's like 11.
Yeah, the musicians are the worst. But then, there's just like some guys that's like they get up early, and that's how they get their stride in the day, But I'm more of like, let me sleep throughout the day. I'll deal with everything when everybody's asleep, in the night. Yeah. But
that's cool. You work in the shadows.
Yeah. Love the dark. Love my little cave.
That's awesome. What would you say growing up is an album that like you just could not stop listening to, whether it influenced you or not, or it was just a guilty pleasure? It's just an album that you just couldn't put down. Like you couldn't take it out of your Walkman.
There was, I think the first one, like, you hear songs and you like your songs, but, back then, there wasn't the MP3s you could just access. So you had to buy the albums and sit through 14 songs so you get to yours, But I think the first album that really, like, I just played all the way through constantly on every CD player, on everybody's CD player. Check this out, It was like a band from the Bay Area called Operation Ivy, from Berkeley, which eventually turned into Rancid. But yeah, it was just so energetic, and the album's called Energy, so it just was so fitting. It got me influenced not only in punk rock and singing and playing, but reggae and ska, because they were kind of like a hybrid band. So it was cool. It was interesting hearing those combinations for the first time.
Yeah, I love that band too. I gotta say, that's my favorite, and that was like a gateway to everything else.
It seriously was, yeah.
That's awesome. What would you say is your favorite food?
Peruvian.
A specific dish?
Lomo saltado, for sure.
Oh, yeah?
I think I'm going to get that after this, actually.
There's some good Peruvian places around here
really?
in the valley. Yeah, I've had like 3 good places. I'll give you some after.
Need that, yeah.
It's really good. They're not that far.
Oh, there you go.
It's like down the street.
Better. Yeah, I've had it for the first time. My lady actually introduced it to me. She has a local restaurant by where her mom lives and stuff, and she was trying to explain it to me. I'm like, so it's seafood, but not? And it's Peruvian, And it just blew my mind, and it's been like our one of our spots for sure.
Nice, yeah, I love Peruvian. Do you have a favorite planet? Is that a thing for you? Do you like outer space?
Interstellar. I consider myself an interstellar feller for sure. That's what we call it. But
I like that.
Yeah, definitely. The sun is definitely like my source of anything. But I get kind of like really. My sister was really into astrology, and she kind of like made a lot of sense of things, and it's kind of in a spooky way too. But she kind of like got me into that kind of sense of spiritualness, but also like science and all the things that kind of just tie together in a weird mythical kind of sense. So I definitely like seasons are more like weather and stuff like that is like definitely something that attracts me, because like yesterday, the other day, it was like the sky was so nice, and I was just like, damn, this is crazy. That's probably why I feel good right now. So I always get feelings from that stuff more than like planets and stars and stuff like that.
Okay, yeah. More of the weather and more just how things flow in the universe, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. Are you much of a reader? Do you read?
Yeah, I love reading. Mostly, but like autobiography stuff, or it's just like the so and so in the studio stories and stuff like that.
Do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite?
Yeah, right now I'm reading. It's a book. Jeff Emmerich, actually, he's the producer, engineer, or more the engineer during the Beatles era when they were kind of really, really experimental and really just kind of going for it, and they were making money for everybody, so everybody's just letting them go crazy, But it's a book called Here, There, Everywhere, Here, There, and Everywhere, and it's cool because a lot of these Beatles books, they protect the stories and the lore of them so much that you tend to hear a lot of the same stories. But this book is interesting because he's kind of telling it like how it is. It's like Paul came in this day like really bullying everybody, and Ringo just didn't care. He just was so real about it, and just and he had to manage and deal with all these egos at a most critical time. So it was cool to see that little different change up, because I'm a huge Beatles fan and Beatles books, and those are the type of books I read. Just documentary type.
Would it be worth a read to read a Thee Sinseers book?
It'd be crazy. That needs like a movie. For sure.
Is one of those coming of age, or coming of soul movies.
And it's funny because like those are my favorite movies too. La Bamba and anything to do with you see the rise and the story and where they come from, and you get to put the whole picture behind it. It's a trip.
And it'd be cool to put East Los Angeles into that realm of movies. There's been a few, but we need more. Yeah. Right.
That's why. Did you watch that This Fool on the Hulu?
Yeah.
I thought that was such a nice and it sucks that's not going on anymore. But I thought that was such a nice little leap for everything that's going on right now with music and stuff like that. It was cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. Yeah. So we got to get to know Joey Quiñones a little bit more. And now let's talk about work, man. You just released your new debut album, Sincerely Yours. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It is a beautiful album. Go check it out right now. Here's the album art for you, so you can go to your favorite record store and pick one up, or online, right?
It's available at all Target.
All Target?
Yeah, my lady told me that. She's like, they're selling your record at Target. And I'm like, that's pretty cool.
There you go. Yeah. While you're grabbing some groceries, grab Thee Sinseers, Sincerely Yours.
I'm not getting paid for that, by the way. It's not a sponsorship.
You kind of are. If they pick up your album.
I'll see something of that,
Yeah. It was a long time coming. You were telling me that you had it in the can since 2020.
Yeah.
How did that feel? I don't know. Like now that it is out, what are your emotions and what do you hope for the album to do for not just you but the fans?
See, I've thought about all these questions so many times, and for me, it's. I sat in my bedroom, in my underwear, probably writing these songs. And I got to. Those are literally my babies because I went through the whole stages of writing it, fixing it, writing it, showing it to the band, changing it, going back to my original. Like just all the emotions of the insecurities, the emotions, and the process of all of this stuff that leading up to when it's finally out. And when the pandemic happened, it just threw more of that curveball into it, and it seemed like, well, maybe it's not meant to be. And we didn't really know. Once that was it, we didn't force it. We didn't say like, well, let's just put it digital and just have it. It was that wasn't ever an option. It was just like, when the time is right, this album's gonna come out. We were so lucky that Coal Mine was and Penrose, that those labels were so like kind of patient with us, and they really believed in it because, coming for the town that we come from and the background a lot of us come from, it's important for us to be able to do it proper and pay it respectfully to the people that came before us, all the influences, and especially our community. So I'm happy that it happened the way it did because it was supposed to happen that way, So, and I can't complain about that. But.
Yeah, it's kind of hard. It's kind of crazy to think that it's your debut because you've been making music for the longest. You have your singles, and then to finally have this collection of new music to the audience that it's like, oh, we haven't heard. We've been listening to your music for so long, and you got so popular just off a few releases.
And we were so lucky in that because a lot of the guys in the band too were backing up and doing a lot of session work for I was writing for like Trish and a lot of the artists coming out of LA, and a lot of our band members were helping out when the Sacred Souls came in, helping them with horn stuff and arrangement stuff. So it was just like we were always kind of present because we were still working and still kind of, people still knew, us and what we were doing. So when the album came out, I was like, oh yeah, they have a record too. Huh? Yeah. That's cool, it's cool.
How many of these songs, even before it was recorded, like how many were in your back pocket, or did these like spur of the moment you just wrote them?
On this record, some of them we've been like singing in bars. Me and Paco, my guitar player, used to sing a couple of these songs on the corner of Uptown Whittier, busking, just trying to like bust chops and like just build our sound, and I used to tell him, like, if we could get people to like not expecting to like dance or groove on their way to work to stop for a second and like forget about that, then that's good. That take that as like people like clapping in an audience. So we definitely had a lot of trial and error stuff and just kind of like building and really shedding the wood and getting better at what we do. So that time was critical because it really, there's a lot of bands, sometimes they get to a certain point so fast that they don't know how to do certain things or manage, a lot of situations. And I'm glad that everybody in our group is really seasoned in that and really respectful to that and always willing to, sit in a van for 9 hours.
And then, all of these songs are about love and falling out of love and breaking hearts. Have you experienced a lot of that?
Yeah.
Are you,
definitely.
Is that where?
It definitely has. Because especially, being a touring musician, let alone like, being the producer and the engineer and the writer, it's like every relation, when do you have time for me, So, finding somebody that's understanding of that and always, supportive of that is big thing for me to search for and come across and lose. And those experiences, they teach you some things and they make you understand how to feel certain things. So.
I don't know if you can speak to the whole band, but you've been on tour for a long time. You go on tour all the time. You have this great knit of bandmates and friends. But when you're on tour, are you able to say who's the mom, who's the dad, who's the responsible one? Yeah.
Everybody.
What are you in that role?
I'm kind of like the. I don't know. That's not for me to answer, maybe.
Okay.
But but it is. Everybody has their roles. Everybody, I'm part of the group that stays up way too late.
Yeah.
So that's there's a couple of us that you just after the shows we're just so excited and so amped up from the crowd. It's like and just recapping all that throughout the day and just sitting and with a couple of the guys and just having those really intimate conversations late at night. Or it's really really cool things. But that we have the mom in the band, the dads, and I would say Bolio is like the dad, or Chris, the bass player. He's the dad because he's the one. I know he stresses out a lot of us. I'm more like the fun uncle, like the one that will take you to the concert and don't tell your mom,
Yeah, that's funny.
But and everybody else is just a bunch of siblings, and a bunch of their kids, softball team
running around.
everything.
That's funny. I know you just released this album, but are you always constantly writing? Is there already like something else in the works?
I think that was cool too. Like getting this album out, it just opened up like the possibility, and it just was like wiping a clean slate, So immediately after, literally when they shared the pre-order link, I was like writing songs like, oh, good, I don't have to worry about that anymore.
That's funny.
And it happens at really scared times because you go through these moments of, that's it, I wrote all my songs, that's it. I don't know what to do anymore, but then all of a sudden something, you go on a tour with the band. We've been lucky enough to have been able to pick like our support acts for the tours. So, we're just always bringing bands that we like, bands that make sense, and, and some of our friends, So we did a tour with this band called the Charities. They're kind of from like Northern Cali, San Diego, back and forth. And I just, they're good friends and they have a good sound, great musicians, but shout out to the Charities. And I came home and just immediately started writing songs because it was just like, just not necessarily a different sound, but it was just inspiring in a way, just hearing something new and liking it, and coming home and like getting your pen out and your guitar. So it was, those things are what kind of fuel that at random times.
Nice. Yeah, it's a whole experience and just like there's so many. You just go through so much, even when on tour and everything. I can't imagine. Oh,
That's the thing.
your
I always imagine like, oh, I'm gonna be on tour writing, but
It doesn't happen that much.
not as much because
Okay.
we're always kind of like, right now at least, we're always like boom, 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 boom. So when you can sleep, you got to get it in. But so there's like sometimes it's does the opportunities kind of rarely come up. I know Brian. I always see him writing on the road, which is a cool thing to see because you see the evolution of stuff like that, and then you hear the Altons play it live, and it's just like, wow. I remember he was in a pit stop station, a gas station, writing this.
That's interesting. Yeah, and the Altons, they're also part of Thee Sinseers and with like a few members. And how does that dynamic work when on tour? I'm sure, I know you can't probably speak to them, but maybe just seeing Brian and Adriana, do you see that they get exhausted or?
I don't think they get exhausted. I just like I've been in the back, stuffed in the van since I was 14. So that's like, for me, like weirdly, like as soon as I get into the van, I knock out. That's the only way. It's like being cradled to sleep. But sometimes like it's hard being like in Adriana's position. She's the only girl with the exception of Caitlin. They're the only two girls around 9 other dudes who are just really over the top. So they have the thickest skin, and they manage everything so cool and collective. It's cool. It's cool to see because they could easily be like, I don't need to deal with this.
And just
fly me out. I'll see you guys at the gig. But they sit through it because they know how important that time is to put into it. So to see them tough it out, and not just because they're women and outnumbered, but just because they're learning how to manage this new realm and this new stage of being in a band. It's cool to see.
That's really cool. I'm always a person about titles. I like how titles come together. How did this title come together? Like, was it a no-brainer? Like, Sincerely Yours, that's what it's gonna be from the get-go? Or was there an evolution to how you were gonna title your debut album?
I think it was just, it was naturally no-brainer sense, but at the same time, I can't stress how much it felt like it was never gonna happen, So, a lot of the songs kind of like, I try to do a lot of titles engaging, like, for you, take a chance on me, just like very personal. And Sincerely Yours was just like, it just felt like, we went through all this, and this is our story, it's our love letter, and it's, it's for you guys, and it's like, Sincerely Yours, us, So it was just, it just fit. We had the song, I think the song was written first, Sincerely Yours, and then the band name came as The Sinseers, and then, so it was just, when there wasn't every opportunity to do a tour or a record, it was a no-brainer to use that first,
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's awesome, man. Well, let's get you in there, get you on the piano.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming by all the way
Appreciate
to
you,
Northridge, man.
Yeah, always good to see you.
Yeah, likewise. I hope I get to see you on tour. They're about to go on tour, hit a bunch of cities, so they're coming to a city near you. And go grab Sincerely Yours. Joey Quiñones, thank you again.
Appreciate you, man.
Can you give a little, entice the audience to stick around? What songs are you going to perform for them right now?
I'm going to do all the sad, cheesy, no, I'm going to do a couple songs, from the record that, we've been playing for a minute, and we're excited for you guys to hear this intimate version of it, because, that's, it's kind of like where the process starts, and, you're able to hear the record and hear the full picture of it. But, doing something like this is kind of, it's my jam, because I love doing that stuff. But What's His Name, our 45, our I guess somewhat our most popular song, and just another original song, a newer song that I've been writing and working in. I've always kind of played around with, and given an opportunity, I'm going to try it. I'm going to do it, So
Perfect. There you go. Joey Quiñones from Thee Sinseers, here for you on the SoCal Sound. Thank you for watching.
Hey nothing new to me. I hold your picture all through the night, wondering if maybe could have done you right. Pain and heartaches, it ain't nothing new to me. I hear my brothers, they're singing about brotherly love, peace and harmonies. Pain and heartaches, it ain't nothing new to me. They ain't at all. It ain't nothing new to me. Yeah, yeah. Take a chance on me. I love you, I do. Take a chance on me. I love you, I do. If love was a flame, let it burn like a torch around the world. If love was a game, take my hand and roll the dice upon the board. 'Cause I need you. Take a chance on me. Yes, I need you. Take a chance on me. Take a chance on me. I love you, I do. Take a chance on me. I love you, I do. 'Cause it's been so long since I've seen the love that I lost, and I'm feeling that she's feeling. Yes, I'm feeling that she feels the way that I do. So I'm gonna get her back into my arms. Yes, I'm gonna get her before it's too late. Take a chance on me. likes to call you. Tell me on the phone, I'm in love with you, yeah. Because I tried to give you love, but you keep lying.